Hello. Welcome to Mandibil. I was planning on talking to you about a few thoughts about why philosophy tends to not be that popular in public discourse, right? In sort of, it's not, when there's some problem somewhere and people need to sort of, let's say, get together to figure out how this is done, the first thing people call are not philosophers, right? And there might be good reasons for this, right? And it might be sort of slightly more complicated than it sounds from the get-go here, right? But what I'm going for is that everybody has to do the philosophy. You can't call on somebody who can then give you the solution, because you are a part of the solution, right? And that's also the frustrating thing about being very outspoken about his philosophy, as I would consider myself. And I would call that being a philosopher, when you are, expressing your thoughts, right? And your questions, maybe, right? There's a famous scene, or maybe there's a famous movie called Lawrence of Arabia, which is one of my personal old favorites. It's the epic movie to rule all other epic movies, right? There's a famous scene, or there's a scene in the beginning where he sits in this, when we get to Cairo, Lawrence sitting in the cellar, drawing up maps of the Middle East, right? The Suez Canal and Palestine and all that, right? And some other colleagues of soldiers comes down and they're talking to him, right? And then one of these soldiers expresses, a sort of a normie kind of, slightly philosophical questions, right? And then Lawrence says, well, you are a philosopher, right? Sort of in a slightly condescending way or passive-aggressive way. But still, it's like, okay, but then you are a philosopher. The guy doesn't, I know it's a movie, right? But, the guy doesn't say, okay, I guess I'm a philosopher. I guess I can think for myself. No, he just keeps asking Lawrence these weird questions, right? So the point may be that Lawrence is kind of, or the script writer is trying to illuminate that for Lawrence to be able to say, well, you're a philosopher, it indicates that he's actually sort of trained himself in philosopher, at least to some extent, right? And it is a highly philosophical movie if you care to look for the clues, right? And that could be a task all by itself, watching this old movie, right? Okay, the point I'm getting to is that, well, you can't tell anybody else what their philosophy should be, even if you believe that you have got everything right. From their standpoint, they're just listening to words, right? They have to have the correct understanding, and they have to do this and do that. And you might even, you have your own experience, and you're extending the axioms that you are having the same. These other people are having the same kind of experience as you are, and you could maybe get to some objectivity, as I've been, arguing for a lot of times, that you have to. Your propositions is to agree about concepts, right? But that doesn't mean that how you arrive at this understanding is the same way that somebody else should arrive at it, right? And there's so many subjective aspects of most of what we're dealing with is subjective. Your philosophy is your philosophy. Your experience is your experience. Your conceptualization, your cognition of elephant is your cognition of elephant. Just because you experience elephant doesn't mean that I experience elephant, and so on, right? But then the frustrating thing, as I pointed out earlier, is that, well, if I have a strong sense as somebody who's philosophical that a lot of other people have no fucking clue what they're talking about, it's kind of, what's it called? I feel a very strong urge to sort of help them get over the ramp or get going in philosophical thinking and so on, right? And all these sort of normies, let's say, they have their own little pocket philosophy that they're working from. This is how it works. I've been told, so I don't have to think for myself. I'll just do it, right? Shut up and calculate, right? So that's the frustrating thing. So, a guy like Stefan Molyneux has, taken off the gloves and say, well, I'm right, and I have to convince people, right? I have to convince them, because I know I'm right and they're wrong. They're doing it incorrectly, so I have to change them. And if they don't do it rightly, I can shoot them, right? That's not good, right? And it goes to show that it doesn't work this way, right? I mean, yeah, I know that, YouTube and Twitter and all that, these social platforms, most of them are deeply corrupted, right? And I don't know what will happen to Twitter now that Elon Musk has sort of taken over. I'm not sure. He's sort of very trolly character. I have deep respect for his free market approaches and his visions and so on. I am very sympathetical to that. But I don't know about him as a sort of philosophical guy, right? So it's like, I don't have too much, trust in what is being put in front of me from mainstream media and social media and so on, right? It's highly censored, right? So, and that's also a very sad situation that what people are, the free Western world, and oh my fucking God, nobody is free here. We are slaves to the system, and you're being hunted down for not being politically correct, and you're being shut up and character assassinated and so on, and parked outside the social system if you do not comply, and spout the same spout, I guess it's called, but I'm not sure. The same rhetoric that your masters, those who are in control of the narrative, spout, right? Oh, so it's these normies that are being fucking, dragged around in this mind fog of gaslighting, right? And manipulation, and be afraid of that, and be afraid of that, and be afraid of that, right? That's what you get with people whose own ability and strength to think for themselves and stand by it has been all but destroyed, right? So it's really an uphill battle to sort of getting philosophy across. And another point about it is that when you're philosophizing, you're sort of staying in the thinking mode, right? But what people tend to be looking for are answers. I should do this, I should do that, right? And a good philosopher shouldn't give you answers to that, because they can't, because you are limited by a moral principle. And the moral principle must be saying that you are individually responsible for your actions. So I can't tell you what to do. Then I'm sort of taking control of you as you being some kind of robot that I'm, manipulating or, manually driving around. But I don't have your experiences, and your experiences are that which guides your actions, and you have to adjust your actions to whatever moral principle you find to be the correct one, right? So it's like philosophy is disconnected from what people tend to be looking for, right? If they have there are the rules and the laws and maybe even the Bible and so on, they're just saying, well, that's what I need because that's what everybody else is doing. So I have to conform to that because that's what everybody else I'm in contact with are doing. So we are discussing how to get around the law or how to understand the Bible and these things, right? And if I'm not talking about that, they don't give a shit, right? They don't give a shit. They want to know how to understand what Joe Biden is saying, right? And what Boris Johnson is saying, and how does that influence my life? And are they good people or bad people, or along these lines, right? What fraction are they serving, and who are they? Who do they answer to? And maybe they don't even want to know that because that's conspiracy, right? That's what they're interested in, or if it's something that is even slightly abstract from that and smells a bit of you have to think for yourself, they get this uneasiness and anxiety, and they're running away from you because thinking for yourself, are you crazy, right? So that's also a severe limitation in order to get philosophy across, because people don't even understand the language, basically, right? They don't understand the language of free thinking. They simply cannot adapt to free thinking. It has to be according to some narrative that they have been trained all their life to follow. So if the vocabulary you're using doesn't conform to that narrative, they're just shutting off, right? They're just, no, I don't know, I don't care, right? You're not speaking the language, right? Sprechen Sie talk, as he says in Die Hard, right? I don't sprechen talk, right? So it's like it's a and I don't care about that. Oh, there's a bird. These crazy birds in the roadside. There's where I live in Denmark, there is a certain bird that's called a pheasant. I suppose you know about it, but it's a very exotic bird that some sailors or some explorers brought to Denmark, or maybe to Germany, so close by, right? Because they thought they were cute or pretty, or have them running around in the garden or something like that. And then they started to multiply, right? And then they have stayed ever since. But for some reason, these pheasants, they don't have the same sense of urgency that other birds in the ecology seems to have around these parts, right? So they sort of walk around on the roads, not maybe out in the roads, but you oftentimes at certain times of year you see them, at the roadsides, and they're sort of wandering around confused or something like that. They don't understand that if they're hit by that thing that I would call a car, well then it's goodbye pheasant, right? So it's just a side story. So I guess there's some DNA or something that they haven't, evolution takes a bit of time to get around how to behave safely in this environment. Well, they're still here, but just a little side note. But this philosophy thing is, I'm not going to sell out, and that's also one of the things that you will see with a particular guy like Stefan Molyneux. He sells out. He starts to talk about Donald Trump to get listeners, right? He starts to talk about Christianity, and then it might also go deeper with him, because all this Christianity bullshit he's pulling after 10 years of bashing Christianity, it's simply so thick, this layer of manipulation and sophistry, that it's like it's toe curling the disgusting, right? And that's how do I reach people who don't want to be reached, right? How do I do that? Well, basically you can't, right? there are, at this point, I think there are 5 or 6 of you guys on the Discord server who are, at least 3 or 4 that sort of regularly checks in. And Einkraug, shout out to you for being very, very active on the board, right? It just goes to show, even if I have 205 listeners on YouTube, 5 of them drop in on my Discord server, and maybe 1 or 2 is very active, right? So it's a long haul, right? And you can see the problem clearly shown to you when your master tells you to take an experimental jab that hasn't been tested, and people are dropping dead like flies, and passing out and getting all sorts of adverse reactions, and people are saying, I have to get my jab because I'm told to, right? So then they're accepting that, they're eating it raw, right? Because they're told to. But what they can sort of by the free own accord, start to listen to sort of arguments and philosophy and so on. No, they don't care about that. Who would want to? They're probably out to manipulate me, these free thinkers, right? So my stance is, well, let's save what can be saved, right? And leave the rest alone. Don't bother trying to wake up idiots, right? I'm not trying to be facetious about what's it called. They can't help themselves, right? They don't know what the hell they're doing. They're just like lemmings following the trend. I would think that deep down they understand that they don't have a self. They don't have a personality. It has been ripped out of them from birth, right? At least attempted to. So they don't want to. They don't want to think for themselves, right? They want to stay in the fantasy that the masters know everything, right? Otherwise they would be forced to think for themselves. And that wouldn't be nice, because they haven't been doing that for 40 years or something like that, right? Whatever. 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years. There's no saving these people. There's no saving. It's just, those who can listen and think for themselves, these are the ones that you can possibly get along with, right? These are the good people, and they are far between, right? It's very rare to find mentally well-functioning people, in my experience, right? During the last 10 years, I have met a lot of people, and what I see is people do not want to think for themselves, right? As soon as you challenge the narrative, right, they get hostile. Nobody can think. There's some people who have a bit of it, right? And then when you get to some point, they sort of say, okay, here to this point and no further, right? Some people are sort of half awake, you could say, right? And you might have success in sort of convincing them to be completely self-sufficient, but I wouldn't count on it, right? And even people who should, are so close to agreeing might disagree on something very fundamental, right? Like, metaphysics. So the reason why the only way to get people to work together is to threaten them into submission. I think that's why people want there to be rulers. They want other people to be forced to participate in something you could call a society, right? Because then they know they're forced to. It's maybe even that they want to be themselves want to be forced to participate. I want my masters to force me into this society, so I know that I have something to count on, right? Otherwise, I don't know what to do, right? If I'm not forced to participate in this society, I will have to make every decision for myself. Oh no, anxiety, right? Now, this is only a half-truth in the sense that people want to feel that there's a master that forces them to do something, right? Which is another indirect way of saying, then if I'm forced to do it, all the other people are also forced to do it, right? But then they want to manipulate their masters into slacking on the demands of themselves while keeping the other people enslaved, right? It's weird, like leftists, they are really they hate right-wing people, right? But they want to force them into associating with them, right? They want to force them into submission to this society. But if you hate the right so much, why don't you just leave them alone then, right? Why do you want to force them into participating when you don't like them? Is it because you need their money or what, right? So this kind of sick control freakness is what destroys everything. Because people don't want to take responsibility for their own life, basically. They want a power to control everybody, so that they make that power, that violent power, makes sure that you have a society, so to say, right? That you have some people who are dependent on you as a person, because you are a part of that society, so to say. I don't know what a society is, but it's just an artificial label to make people feel that they're not alone in life, right? But then they want to have certain privileges for themselves, right? They want to have privileges. Women want to have abortions. They want to have, particular rules that make sure that women get jobs more easily to equality, and so they want privilege. People want privileges, right? While they want the other people to be enslaved. So, and we are in sort of a late stage welfare hell, right? And God only knows how much longer it can go on. Now, when you have a fiat monetary system where your masters can basically print all the money they want, there's no saying how long time it can carry on, right? So it's just this is a death row. What's it called? It's a slow train wreck death scene from a B movie, right? Of the Western world killing itself, right? Because people don't want to be individuals. They want to have somebody else making sure that people are forced into association, and then they want privileges for themselves, right? This is never going to work, right? It might work for some time, just like when you jump from the Eiffel Tower. You can fly for about 20 seconds, right? And then you'll be splattered on the pavement. And that is what is going on. And the point is, you can't philosophize. You can philosophize yourself, but you will have a very, very hard time getting under the skin and making people think for themselves, and rather than giving them solutions like most philosophers attempt to do, right? So then the philosophers are just becoming the new dictator who are telling people what to do, right? Or attempting to, and they know that, so they will reject you. They have their own dictator already, right? Who's giving them certain privileges, right? So that's why I'm constantly saying that philosophy is about thinking for yourself. It's not about I'm listening to this philosopher because this philosopher is giving me the solutions I want, something like that, right? Then it's bad philosophy. Because you're not doing philosophy. You're just accepting what some other person, which is just an experience in your mind, right? You can't let an experience tell you how to understand an experience, right? That's begging the question, circular argument. And this is one of those problems that all these philosophers don't seem to realize, like by Bernardo Kastrup, and recently starting on deconstructing Keith Frankish, who apparently makes the same invalid inference, right? Or invalid argumentation structure. So it just doesn't work. So these are my thoughts today. Check in the board, check in the Discord link below, and otherwise share, like, and subscribe, and give me a comment. Let me know what you think about this. Are you philosophizing and trying to get under the skin of people, and do you have any success with this? As I would think you are not having. But let me hear it from you. Otherwise, have a nice day. See you in the next one.